Or usually in the Arcade Village apartments now.
Well, I can tell you it's been a very, very dangerous and extremely fast pursuit. They've been chasing that van right there. Now,
It's exactly what he's doing. Are you Googling the laws right now?
Henderson Police Department's SWAT team responded to the scene and set up a perimeter around the condominium.
I travel in and out of time zones.
And the 3 key rules for a criminal defense lawyer: always on time, impeccably dressed, and occasionally sober.
The yellow sports car up ahead won't stop. Then something happens you might expect in a Spider-Man movie. It wraps around the tire of the fleeing vehicle and stops all forward motion.
Objection, action answered.
I mean, he leaps over the fucking bench.
No, the thing is, that's my property. You have no choice.
Actually, I do, because I found friggin' Xanax bars on your driver's seat. If you want to explain something, explain those.
Cops get very frustrated when you don't answer the questions.
No.
Step back forward.
He's gonna go straight. There's a car right here. Got him.
All right, I'm going to excuse everyone. Mr. Brooks is being removed from the courtroom.
This is fucking hilarious. So he pulls out a joint in court.
Go, 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 go.
Turn on your stomach! Stop fighting us! Stop resisting!
The injury by the police, that may be a separate issue for you to file a civil suit.
Chris, just while he's doing that, talk to me. What were you running for again?
Warrant.
Warrants? A felony warrant, city warrants, what?
Felony warrant on Kansas.
Well, I'm pretty sure they ran you, and you don't have any warrants.
I don't.
No.
No warrants.
No. So all that for nothing, right? No warrants, no nothing.
Yeah.
Police! A little farther back. A little more. Okay, go.
I'm not gonna sit here and let you fix the trial because you don't want to tell the truth to the jury.
We're there, guys. Got eyes on.
I want to suck. Yes, I think I would like to suck your dick. I don't think so.
I prefer not to.
I prefer not to, sir. See that? I love that.
So do you wish to say anything?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Well, hello. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us yet again. Bri, check your email, darling. And good morning to you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're coming from, wherever you're watching us. Welcome. So, today, we attack the ATF. Mr. Brian Higgins. He's been a bit naughty, I think. Been a bit naughty. Hopefully you had a fantastic Sunday, and welcome to brand new, fresh Monday of true crime. It never rests, unlike the defense rests. So, we've gone past Jen McCabe. We've gone past the 2 Sullivan sisters, and we are now on to Brian Higgins. Now, Brian is the good mate of Brian Albert, and he owns the Jeep with the plow on the front. So he is about to testify, and it is very interesting. If you haven't already seen it, yeah, there's a lot of dirty laundry. There's a little bit of spice, a little bit of FBI, a lot of Sally porting, and yeah, I'll let you be the judge. So let's get into it, shall we? So, day 17, I think we're at. I do believe.
Yes, I do. Good morning.
He's being sworn in.
Come on.
That means you can't tell any lies, Brian. Hello and welcome. Grab your snacks, grab your slippers.
Anytime
Come
you're
and
ready,
sit
Mr.
down and join us.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
My name is Brian Higgins, Higgins.
And where do you live, sir?
Barnstable County, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived there?
I've owned that property since approximately 2018.
And do you work, sir?
I do.
What do you do for work?
I'm a special agent with the United States Department of Justice, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
And how long have you been doing that?
Just over 15 years.
Now, sir, prior to that, prior to your employment with the ATF, what, if any, other positions, what did you do for work before that?
I was a lieutenant with Cambridge Fire Department.
And how long were you a lieutenant with the Cambridge Fire Department?
I was a lieutenant probably for about 8 years. Total, I was with Cambridge approximately 15 years.
Now, at some point, did you reside in the town of Canton?
I did.
And when was that, sort of what year to what year?
I think that it was shortly after my sister passed away. So it was probably 2017 I purchased that house, and I sold it in January of 2022.
Oh, lolly,
Was
come
that
on.
Early January, late January?
We're not into real
On or
estate.
about January 5th.
And when you sold that property, did you move down to Barnstable County, or did you live somewhere else as well?
For a period of time, I rented an in-law apartment in West Roxbury, and I had my property on Cape Cod as well.
Oh, I should have time-stamped it
And that
instead of
in-law property,
running by the seat of my
West Roxbury,
pants.
that was in 2022 as well?
Yes.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, 2022 into January 29th of 2022. Do you recall those dates?
Yes.
Do you recall what days of the week those were?
Friday.
The 28th was Friday, and the 29th was Saturday.
If I could take you back just to at least a day or so before that, but specifically the 28th. On the 28th, where were you on that date initially?
New York City.
And why were you in New York City, sir?
I was in New York City for the funeral services of Officer Mora and Rivera, who killed in the line of duty.
And fair to say there was a large contingent of law enforcement there,
Yes.
including several people from Massachusetts.
Yes.
And when did you go down to New York City?
I believe it was the 27th of February. Might have been Thursday.
So was there a wake and a funeral?
Thank you for my coffee
There was a
too,
wake and a
right?
funeral.
It
Some
was
people went to the
yummy.
wake, some people went to the funeral. There was services in over those couple of days.
And you went to the funeral on the 28th, is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point, do you make your way from New York City back towards Massachusetts on the 28th?
Yes.
And do you recall about what time of day that was?
Late morning, possibly.
And why is it that you were coming back on the 28th specifically?
The anticipation of a blizzard.
And how did you...
Ah,
You drove, is that correct?
I drove my government vehicle down to New York for the services.
And what kind of government vehicle was it that you drove down and back?
That was a Dodge Ram pickup.
Now, on the way back, who, if anyone, came with you for the ride back from New York City to Massachusetts?
Brian Albert, Kevin Albert, and Eddie Hernandez.
And who are they to you, and what, if any, relationship do they have to your work in law enforcement?
Well, first and foremost, they're all friends. Kevin Albert is a detective with the Canton Police Department. Brian Albert was a sergeant detective with the Boston Police Department. Eddie Hernandez, also a detective with the Boston Police Department.
And
So we
how
have
long
contacts.
have you known each of these individuals?
So out of the group, Eddie Hernandez would be the person that I knew the longest. I had worked with him back in the early 90s at the Mass General. Then it would probably be Brian Elbit, I may have had some contact with him when I was on the Cambridge Fire Department, assigned to the Fire Investigation Unit. And then Kevin Elbit would be probably the last in the three that I knew.
Now, speaking to the Canton Police Department at that time, as far as your assignment went with work, where was it that you worked out of, or where was sort of your base of operations? So to say?
Canton PD, I had an office there.
And how was it that you came to have an office at Canton PD?
That relationship was through Chief Berkowitz, born through a tragedy. When my sister passed away, we became friends, and he offered up the space because I had also moved there. So it was close. It was a jumping off point.
And were you the only federal agent that had space within the Canton Police Department?
I was the only one that had an office. I believe there was an HSI agent that might have had some access there to come in, hook up his computer and stuff. And there was also an MBTA police detective, transit police detective, who also had access there. But I was really the only one that maintained a desk, so to speak.
And as far as your work or familiarity with work, as
homicide scene
law enforcement
investigator,
officers, is that abnormal to have access to a local PD or have an office or desk there?
Objection.
No, it's not abnormal to have space within a department that you work closely with.
Now,
morning, Mr.
as
Jackson.
far as the ride back is concerned, when you drive from New York City back to Massachusetts, about how long a drive was that?
So typically it'd be I'd say like a 4-hour ride, depending on traffic. This was longer, and I would also factor in the fact that we stopped and ate on the way back.
And when you arrived back to Massachusetts, where specifically in Massachusetts did you first go?
So the first place that we went was a Boston Police Department district in Charlestown, where Brian Elbit and Eddie Hernandez had parked their vehicles.
Now, as far as you know, had they driven down to New York City, or how would they come to be in New
The
York?
frisky felines are at it already.
I believe that Brian Elbit, Eddie Hernandez, and Kevin Elbit all flew down to New York.
And they drove back with you because of the storm. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Now, after dropping them off there, where did you go from there?
I went back to the Canton Police Department, where I dropped off Kevin Elbit, and then switched vehicles, got into my Jeep Wrangler, and I traveled up to the hillside in Canton.
Now, as far as traveling up to the hillside in Canton, who, if anyone, did you have plans with, or who, if anyone, did you coordinate with as far as going to the hillside?
Brian Elbit agreed to meet me there.
And as far as switching from your government vehicle to a personal vehicle, is that correct?
Yes.
And why did you do that before going to the hillside?
Because I was technically no longer on duty, so to speak, even though I had been at a funeral. But, I knew I would be consuming alcohol, and we have a policy against that.
Now, as far as vehicles related to you, whether they be personal or work and the Canton PD, how many vehicles did you have at that location?
So I would have had my government truck that I parked there. I would have had a surveillance vehicle that I parked there. And at times, it would sometimes flip in and out between a pickup truck that I had and the Jeep itself.
And the Jeep that you were driving that night, can you describe the Jeep, sort of what it looked like, what kind of Jeep it was?
So it's a 2011 Jeep Wrangler, gray in color. And at the time that I was driving it on the 28th and the 29th the next day, it had a plow on it.
And the plow that you had affixed to the Jeep Wrangler, is that, how big a plow are we talking about?
If I was to guess, it was probably 6 feet 8 inches. I believe they make them in two formats, 6'8" and I think 7'2". But I believe I had the smaller blade on that Jeep.
And how often would you have, was that like a year-round thing, or how often, when about would you have that plow affixed to the Jeep?
What's his
Inclement
policy
weather
on
or impending
chatting up
inclement
mates'
weather.
girlfriends?
And is that something that you used, as far as, what if any use did you put the plow on the front of the Jeep to?
To help family and friends clear the property at the Cape. I had used it when I had the house in Canton.
I sent you the
And,
link to
so
the
you
stream,
go,
Bri, if you wanted
to
to
the
jump
hillside,
on.
and, do you know about what time it was that you got there?
No, again, it would have been after I dropped off Kevin Albert. Definitely would have been dark at that time.
And the hillside, is that an establishment that you're familiar with? You had been there before?
Yes.
And about how long was it after you arrived that Brian Albert arrived?
Shortly thereafter, probably, because he was. I had traveled back, dropped the vehicle off. He may have even beat me there because I went to the station and dropped Kevin off, but I don't think it was contemporaneous, but it was in close proximity.
And once you got to the hillside, how long were you there, and how long was Mr. Albert there?
So I had something to eat. I had something to drink. The approximate time, maybe an hour or so, and then Brian had left before me. I remained, he left.
And if you know, about how long before you left was it that Brian Albert left?
Can you repeat that again?
Brian Albert left before you, correct?
Yes.
About how long before you left was it that Brian Albert left?
Maybe 15 minutes.
And you had some drinks at the hillside, is that correct?
I did.
And do you recall what you drank that night?
Usually what I drink all the time, Jameson and ginger.
And as far as where Mr. Albert was going, what, if any, conversation did you have about that?
He had told me that he was going down to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, which is in Canton Center, and that he'd be meeting his wife and some family and maybe some other people.
And were you invited to come along?
Yes.
Now, the Waterfall, that's an establishment you're familiar with. You've been there previous times as well.
Yes.
And with respect to this evening, so you leave from the hillside and you go directly to the Waterfall?
Yes.
And if you know, about what time was it that you got to the Waterfall?
Again, it was dark. It could have been around 9 in the area, 9 o'clock.
And when you get to the Waterfall, do you recall where in relation to the Waterfall you parked the Jeep at that time?
No.
So you come in to the Waterfall, and where do you go?
I went to a series. I saw Brian and his family, and there was a series of high tops, and I proceeded to the high tops where they were.
Now, with respect to Brian Albert, how would you describe sort of your relationship around this time of January 2022?
He's a good friend. He's a coworker. I had been working closely with his unit. I'd say he was a good friend.
And through that sort of work and your friendship, were you familiar with his family as well?
Yes.
And so when you came over to the area where Brian Albert was, his wife was there, correct?
Yes.
And who, if anyone else, was there that you were familiar with or that you knew when you came?
So it would have been Brian Albert. It would have been Nicole. I believe Caitlin was there. Caitlin Albert, Brian's daughter. Chris Albert, his wife, Julie. There might have been another couple, Matt McKay.
And have communication with each of them through their phones.
I had John's telephone. John and I had exchanged telephone numbers.
And with reference to those communications, were they texts, were they phone calls, or various?
Oh, they would be text.
And as far as the text communications that you had, you received this contact information, you texted, someone replied. How did you know that that was John O'Keefe that was replying to you?
Well, I had him saved in my phone, John O'Keefe. I don't know exactly where he gave me his phone number, but I knew it was him.
Now, on that evening, taking you back to the waterfall, January 28th into January 29th, do you know about what time it was that Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant came into the waterfall?
It would have been, I think, between like 11 and closing. It was something like, well,
And do you recall meant as far as that text message or why you had sent that?
to be honest with you, it was, I guess you could view it as a flirty text.
Now, around midnight or so, when you leave the waterfall, well, I'm sorry, let me take it back just one step. At some point over the course of the evening, while you're at the waterfall, what, if any, discussion is there around the table as far as next steps or where to go from there?
Well, there was talk at the table, I think initially about going back to Chris Albert's Pizza Shop to have some food and drink. And at some point that transitioned into going back to Brian Albert's house.
And as far as the invitation to go back to Brian Albert's house, was that something that was extended to the entirety of the table?
I took it as an open invitation to the people that were together at the table, yes.
And Mr. Albert's house, is that somewhere that you had been to before?
I had been there, the twins' graduation party, which was outside in the backyard. And I think I may have dropped him off on one occasion. I may have dropped something in his mailbox, but those would be the only other times.
And are you familiar, at least?
Sorry. Skip ahead. La la lolly.
May I approach on?
Right.
Yes.
So, the mailbox. The Jeep is supposedly
With that laser
parked,
pointer
yeah.
down your hand, if you could direct the jury's attention to, if you see it in this photograph, where you parked your Jeep at.
So the back end of the Jeep would have been right around the mailbox itself. And the edge of the driveway is right there. I wanted to make sure that I was not blocking the driveway or blocked in.
And so the front of your vehicle would have been pointing in which direction?
I believe that'd be going towards Chapman Street.
So towards the flagpole.
Your vehicle was closest to the house, so the driver's side or the passenger side?
So the passenger side would be closest to the house.
So you parked along the front of the house sort of with traffic, correct?
Yes.
This is 34 Fairview,
Oh, and you can-
Brian Albert's house.
Thank you. So you arrive at the house.
Stop.
You do, as far as the maneuver with the plow in the driveway, and then you park the vehicle, and where is it that you go from there?
Into the house.
And when you get into the house, who, if anyone, is there, or who, if anyone, is coming in with you?
So I might have been there. Well, it was about the same time that Brian and Nicole showed up. I don't know if they entered before me or I entered after them. I entered the house. What I recollect is that Brian Albert Jr. is sitting kind of at the island or in the island area. And I believe he was flanked by at least one female, possibly two, one on each side.
And either of those females, did you know them? Did you recognize them? Did you know who they were?
I may have recognized one I've seen before, but I didn't know them.
And just lastly, before we go back into the house, when you park, when you do the sort of plowing in the driveway and then parking, did you see Mr. Albert arrive at the house around that time?
When I parked the Jeep?
Yes.
Well, yes, so I made the sweep, and as I could see the vehicle coming up, I made the sweep, got out of the way so he could park.
So we had parked in the driveway around the time that you're parking on the street.
Yes.
And so when you come to the house and you see the people that you've described, where were they situated within the house?
So I came through what I would call like a breezeway door. So there's a front door to the residence. There's the garages, and in between there is a like a breezeway door. I came in through there, and it's kind of like you're in the kitchen. And I think there's like an island, so to speak. You may be able to sit at it, and Brian Albert Jr. was right there, and again, flanked by one, if not two females.
Now, at some point after your arrival, who, if anyone else that you were familiar with, came by the house?
I believe it was Jen and Matt McCabe.
You know about how long it was after you arrived that they arrived?
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it was much longer. People started.
All right. I have a timeline. Let's have a look, shall we? Okay. So, Friday the 28th at 11:55 p.m. is where Alison and McCabe and Colin Albert have the text messages about when they want to be picked up and taken home, but they're the screenshots. So when it ticks over past midnight, the timestamp on the phone of the screenshot doesn't change, and then there is a massive gap from the 29th all the way through to the 20th of February. And if you've watched the trial, I think it was Colin that said they used a different platform to communicate. So that's 11:55. So then at midnight, Jen McCabe's phone shows that they are at the Waterfall Bar and Grill. 12:10 a.m., Brian and Nicole arrive home at 34 Fairview. 12:13, Jen and Matt McCabe leave the Waterfall Bar. 12:14, Jen calls John's phone and he answers it. And I've written on the right-hand side here too whether or not it's a witness testimony or whether or not it's actually confirmed evidence that this timeline is accurate. So then we move to the next one, and this is this green area that I've created is the pivotal time frame. So this is the time frame within where shit hits the fan, basically. So between 12:15 and 12:45 is what they can narrow down that Karen and John arrive at 34 Fairview, because the testimonies from multiple people say that they sat in the car for 15 minutes. Some say they just saw one person. Some say they saw both of them. Some say they had the internal light on. Some say that they saw Karen sitting with her hands at 10 and 2 in the steering wheel. There's a lot of varying testimony. So there's a bit of a confusing one as to what time they actually arrived. But according to Karen's phone, I think it was Karen's phone, there is was it John's phone? One of them has them at 34 Fairview. So 12:15, Alison McCabe arrives. 12:18, Jen and Matt arrive at 34 Fairview. 12:18, John calls Jen, and that was answered. He's trying to find out where to go. They're giving instructions. Now, the next one is the important one at 12:20. That's Ryan Nagel and Ricky and Heather. They arrive in their F-150 to pick up Julie, because Julie has texted them to say, come and get me. And when they arrive, all three of them testified independently that they did not see the Jeep. The Jeep that was parked out the front, with its back to the letterbox, pointing towards the flagpole, none of them saw the Jeep. And then you have four phone calls. 4 different timestamps where John O'Keefe's phone extraction on his Apple Health data showed that he was ascending and descending 3 flights of stairs between 12:21 and 12:24. At 12:25 is when the prosecution claims that the incident occurred, is when Karen backs into John, allegedly. That's their time frame. Then 12:27, Jen texts John's phone, and then 2 minutes later, she calls his phone. 12:30 is when Alison McCabe testifies that she went home, which wasn't correct because from her phone extraction, it showed that she got home at 1:30 on her Life 360 data. Then 12:30 to 1 a.m. is when Brian says that he leaves 34 Fairview. That's in his testimony today. But 12:30 is 10 minutes after Ryan, Ricky, and Heather arrived to pick up Julie, and none of them saw his Jeep. So, hello and welcome. Welcome. Go and grab your coffee and your slippers and a snack and come and sit down. Then at 12:32 a.m., John O'Keefe's phone shows that it takes 36 steps, and then from then on, it stops moving. Does not move anymore until it gets picked up by Kerry at 6:08 or something in the morning. And then 5 unanswered calls are made from Jen McCabe to John's mobile between 12:41 and 12:50. So between this 12:15 a.m. and 12:50 a.m. is the pivotal time, basically, of where everything happens. So I have included all the way to 6 a.m. so we can refer to it as his testimony goes. All right, so let's continue back to Mr. Higgins. Just you wait.
Float in at that point.
And beyond sort of the kitchen area that you were describing before, where else did you go within the house that night?
At one point, briefly, Brian Albert showed me some photographs, family. I believe primarily it might have been of his son who had recently been in the Marine Corps. Gone into, I should say.
And do you recall, or why was he showing you specifically like those photographs of his son in the Marine Corps?
Because he's proud.
Now, let me ask you this. As far as yourself and or Mr. Albert, what, if any, familiarity or what, if any, background do you or Mr. Albert have with regard to the military?
Brian was in the Marine Corps. I was in the Army.
Now, this period that you're talking about in the other room, about how long a period was that?
It was brief.
And beyond yourself and Mr. Albert, was there anyone else from the group that you described that was in the room at the same time as you and Mr. Albert?
I don't think so. I think Nicole may have popped in for a second, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
And as far as, do you know approximately what time you left the house on Fairview that evening?
I'd guesstimate it was anywhere between 12:30 and 1 o'clock, but I'm not 100% positive.
So relatively short period of time, is that correct?
It was a short period of time. I knew kind of from the onset when I got in there, it probably wasn't going to be a long time because I'm not a beer drinker and that's what they had. So I was probably one of the first people to leave.
Your friend, Brian Albert, knew what you drank.
Prior to the time that you were there, did you go anywhere else within the home beyond what you've described as far as the kitchen and the living room?
No.
Did you go upstairs at any time?
No.
Did you go downstairs in any sort of basement area at any time?
No.
And when you exited the home, do you recall which of the two doors that you described that you would have exited from?
The same door I came in, the breezeway.
Now, during the time that you were there, similar to what I asked about the waterfall, how would you describe sort of the mood or demeanor within the home?
It was fine. I mean, everybody was happy.
And at any point in time while you were at 34 Fairview, any of the people that were in the house, do you recall seeing them go outside of the house and come back or anything like that?
I can't say definitively I saw anybody come in or out of the house, but I think somebody might have been in the process of maybe being picked up.
And not anybody that you were super familiar with, is that fair to say?
I think it was one of the females.
Now, with respect to the front of the house, at any point in time that you were inside of the house, was your attention drawn, or did you look out the windows or the door or anything like that?
No.
And when you were in the kitchen area, do you recall sort of how you were positioned in relation to the windows facing the front of the house?
So I would have had my back to that area, my back to the door that I came in.
And specifically with reference to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, at any point in time, did you see either of them inside the house or outside of the house or around the house or anywhere around 34 Fairview Road?
Absolutely not, no.
And at any point in time over the course of the evening, what, if any, communication or text or anything did you send to either of those two people while you were at the house on Fairview?
While I was at the house, I think I shot a text just to John. Where are you? I think that's what it was.
And if you recall, did you ever get a response to that text?
No, there was no
Welcome.
response.
Oh,
After you left
it's
the
more than
waterfall,
sus.
when you left the waterfall, was Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, the defendant, still there?
I can't say 100% no.
Sus stand for
But after you left the waterfall, at
sleazy.
any point in time, did you speak to, text with, or communicate in any way, shape, or form, or see in any way,
I'll
shape, or
think
form
about that
with either
one.
Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed?
But
Well,
welcome.
again,
Faye,
the
welcome.
only person I shot the text to while I was at the house was John, but after I left the waterfall, I never saw John O'Keefe or the defendant again.
Now, when you left from the residence, and again, you're not sure what time that was,
Between 12:30 and 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
and do you recall who amongst the group was still at the house at the time you left?
I think I was probably the first person to leave.
So all of the other people that you've described would have still been in the house when you exited from the house.
Yes.
Now, you indicated earlier that you're familiar with Mr. Albert and his family to some extent, correct?
Yes.
You've been to his house for a graduation party for his twins, correct?
Yes.
Through that, at any point in time prior to this date, did you become aware or familiar with Brian Albert's nephew, Colin Albert?
I know the name, and I know that he is one
The
of the
OJ.
sons of Chris Albert.
You familiar with what he looks like?
If he walked in here right now, I wouldn't know.
You would not know?
No.
And beyond the people that you've described as far as seeing at 34 Fairview Road, fair to say you don't recall anybody being introduced or identified as Colin Albert?
No.
Now, you exit from the home through the breezeway door and go over to your vehicle, is that right?
Yes.
And from the time that you would enter the home to the time now that you're exiting from the home, what, if any, change did you note as far as the weather?
Just that the weather was getting worse. The snow was picking up.
And as far as the accumulation that you had described before, as far as you could still see the blacktop and all that when you left the waterfall, what was it like when you came out of the house?
Again, I think that the streets that weren't being traveled, there was snow on them. There was coverage.
And as far as the front lawn area of the house at 34 Fairview Road, what, if any, observations did you make of that?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure. As far as the snow was concerned, was the
Yes.
snow sticking to, or was it accumulating on the lawn as well?
I believe so. I mean, when I walked from the breezeway to the Jeep, there was snow on the ground.
You said you did a sweep of the driveway with your
Now, the
wow.
front
So
yard area of the house, is that something that you were looking at with any particularity or taking note of as you were walking your Jeep down the driveway?
No, it was a long day. We had been on the road. I just was looking to get home.
And so when you get to your Jeep, can you describe to the jury sort of how it was that you pulled away, or what, if anything, you recall about that process?
So I got in the Jeep, started it up, may have looked at my phone, put it in drive and started to pull away. And then I'm like, put the plow up. So I reached, I moved a couple of feet. I heard it grinding on the ground, reached for the device called a fish stick, picked it up, lifted the plow, and then drove away.
And the plow that you had affixed to the front of the Jeep, how is, I think you've talked a little bit about it, but how is that sort of controlled and who controls that?
So the operator controls it. The mechanism to control it, again, is called a fish stick. It's on a cord and it plugs in under the dashboard. I reached down to find out, I don't know if it was on the floor or between the seats, but it's not like a joystick that's attached actually to the dashboard.
So some sort of hydraulic system, is that correct?
Yes, it's a hydraulic based.
Now, in addition to moving it sort of up and down, is there any other way that you can manipulate the blade as far as that switch is concerned?
Yeah, so if I would generally, if I'm driving around town and I'm not worried about the vehicle heating up, I just lift the plow off a couple feet off the ground. If I was on the highway, I would tilt it to get airflow.
And as far as height is concerned for that plow, if you were to lift it all the way to the top, what, if any, impact would that have with reference to your visibility through the windshield?
Zero.
Skip ahead a bit.
Is that the typical path that you would take, sort of park to the back and then cut through the Sally Port into the station?
Yes, that would be the route that I would go.
And if you recall, is that the route that you went on that particular early morning when you came back to the station?
I believe it is.
And when you come back to the station and you go in, where are you going within the police station when you went?
So I'm going up to I was going up to my office to grab the key for that surveillance vehicle. So when you come through that pass-through door at the Sally Port, the first door would be through the booking and the holding area that directly goes into the dispatch area. But if you walk to the extreme other end, there's another door on the other end, common hallway. Walk down that hallway, hit a set of stairs, and I would go up that way.
Now, if I could take you back just for a second, as far as when you initially walk into the Sally Port area, that's a garage, basically, correct?
Yes.
And when you come into the garage, the door that you would then enter to come into the station, where is that in relation to the door that you come from the exterior? How far away are the two?
So if you come into, I guess what you're asking, so if I come into the Sally Port, immediately to the right, there's the door that goes into the holding area, booking area, and then probably it's probably 12 feet long to get to the other door.
So from where you're parking and where you come into the Sally Port, it's not like you then have to walk across the garage or anything like that to get to the door into the station. Is that correct?
Well, you do walk across the garage, but it's small.
And who, if anyone, was blowing up your phone, or who was calling you with that?
Well, I think first it was Chief Berkowitz, and then Brian Albert.
And you mentioned first it was Chief Berkowitz. Did you answer the chief's call at that time?
No.
And was that abnormal for the chief to be calling you at that time of day?
No, he's an early riser, and typically when he was working, again, we also had a friendship. He would call in the morning, kind of like checking in with each other. So I just kind of blew, like, why are you calling me this early? Kind of just blew it off. But then when I saw Brian Albert calling me, like, that kind of caused me some concern, because I'm like, why is he calling me? He was out with me all day yesterday. We both had the same long day, and I was concerned at that point.
And so you answer the phone from Mr. Albert, is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did you learn from him, or what, if anything, did he tell you?
Objection. I'm going to sustain the objection at this point.
So you receive a call from him and you have some sort of conversation, correct?
Yes.
Now, prior to that, from the time that you got home to the time that you answered this call from Brian Albert, you recall having any phone calls or conversations with anybody during that time period?
No.
And specifically, did you talk to Brian Albert on the phone at any point between the time you left his home and the time that you woke up the next morning?
They're referencing the butt
No,
dial.
I did not.
Now, the previous day, over the course of it, we're all waking up in New York and then driving home and going to the hillside and going to the waterfall and going to Mr. Albert's house. Had you and Mr. Albert communicated via cell phone, whether it be text or phone call at any point in time during the course of that day?
You mean the day before?
Yes.
Yes.
So he was fairly recent in your contacts, is that correct?
Yes.
And so as
Trying
far
to explain
as
the butt dial.
that phone call that you received from Mr. Albert, Based on whatever information that you learned from that, what did you do then?
I got dressed and went right over to the house at 34 Fairview.
And when you left your house in West Roxbury and went back to 34 Fairview, what were you driving at that point?
I was still in the Jeep Wrangler.
And if you know about what time or so was it that you arrived back at 34 Fairview late that morning?
Maybe a little after 7.
And when you arrived there, what, if anything, did you see?
I mean, I just went into the house.
As far as outside of the house, when you arrived there, what, if anything, did you see outside of the house?
I don't recall. Maybe a police car. I don't remember.
So remember that. That's at 7 a.m. So let's go back to the timeline. Page 2. So we have, page 1 at 2:22 is the butt dial incident with Brian Albert. So in the morning, it is at 6:03 that the 911 call is made by Jen because they found John. And now Brian is saying he's arrived back at 34 Fairview by 7 a.m., which is an hour, and there is nothing there. No crime scene tape, no people, no crime scene investigators, no officers, no fire brigade, no nothing. Yes, they've taken John to the hospital, but no preservation of crime scene, nothing. It's just like it never happened. Yeah. Good one. I like that. Yeah, I don't understand how within the hour, Karen Reid has, been held against her will. She's been sectioned in the hospital, and Brian Higgins goes back to Brian Albert's house, and there's nothing to see here. Okay, let's keep going.
Now, with regard to,
I'd like to know what he was
weather,
doing.
when you woke up and you were driving back to 34 Fairview,
the police
what was the
station all
weather
day.
like at that point in reference to when you had gotten home to West Roxbury the night before?
It was real bad.
It was real
and
bad.
As far as when you get to the house at 34 Fairview, sometime around 7 a.m. or so, where is it that you parked in relation to the home at that point?
I might have went in the driveway. I don't remember specifically where I parked.
And as far as other vehicles there, how many other vehicles, were there more or less vehicles there that morning than there were when you were there the night before?
I couldn't say definitively.
And when you come into the house, who, if anyone, is it that you see inside the house when you get there?
So I saw Brian, I saw Nicole. Brian Jr. may have popped in and out of the same kitchen area that I was in before. Jen and Matt McCabe. And then a short time later, Julie Albert showed up.
And Julie Albert, when she showed up, what, if anything, did you observe her to have with her when she showed up?
Like box of donuts or muffins or something like that.
And as far as the house when you come in, similar to the evening before, but how would you describe sort of the mood and demeanor of the people in the house when you arrived there later on that morning, sometime around 7 or so?
Really?
People were pretty distraught.
And did you know why they were distraught?
Because John had been found on the lawn.
And is that why you had gone to the house?
Yes.
And when you received that information or were informed of that, how did you receive that information, or what, if any, impact did that have on you?
Well,
If sustained, you can ask it differently.
All right, let's move ahead.
side, I think he might have been with his child after a sporting event. I think I said hello, I bought him a drink. But I wouldn't classify that as socializing, more being friendly. So I think during the actual interview, he specifically asked me, are these, I would say in sum and substance, he said, you know, is this an accurate representation? Has anything been deleted? And I said, no. I mean, as with respects to the text with the defendant from the first time that she reached out to me and texted me, nothing had been deleted. As far as John's text string, we might have had older text strings that were deleted, but that was what I gave him. What I gave the troopers was exactly
what you wanted to give them, and only
I captured everything is exactly it is what it is. Everything that was on those phones was provided. Nothing was deleted.
As far as,
Rubbish.
When you provided
Bullshit.
these text communications to the troopers, was that something that they had asked for, or was that something that you volunteered?
I volunteered that to them.
And upon them sort of receiving them from you, did they have further questions beyond what they had already asked you based on what you provided?
I believe they got into other specific questions, specifically in relation to John O'Keefe and the defendant, as far as intimacy and things like that. There was more detailed questions that followed.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
He only provided the stream of messages between himself and Karen, and then changed carrier the day before he was supposed to. There was a motion to preserve the phone data, and then destroyed the SIM card and the mobile.
Sure, I'm going to show you two documents. One. One is 12 pages long, one is 56 pages long. If you can just look at those briefly and familiarize yourself with them, look up when you can. Do you recognize what those are, sir?
I'm sorry, could you say that?
Sure. My apologies. Do you recognize what those are, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize those?
So those are the two documents that I provided to the troopers during the interview.
And the shorter one, who, if any, one is those communications with?
John O'Keefe,
And the longer one, about 56 pages long or so, who, if any, one of those communications with?
the defendant.
May I approach them?
Yes.
Almost introduce in a minute.
Okay. So we'll do them separately, please, so that the first 12-page one. Thank you.
May I return both of those to the witness?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention first to what's marked as Exhibit 103. And that the communications or the text communications that you had with Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
And sir, if I could turn your attention to the first sort of content within that, just in reference to what is the date of the first sort of exchange in these text communications between yourself and Mr. O'Keefe?
Wednesday, November 24th.
And in in general, can you describe for the jury what that conversation was about on Wednesday, November 24th?
He basically, it's kind of hard to read. I apologize, but it looks like he's just reached out to me. He said, "What's up, Pell? Where are we going to hang local? We are going to hang local. Are you drinking?"
So he's out, he's trying to see where you are and if you want to meet up.
Yes.
Now, sir, if I could direct your attention to the last page within those documents you have before you. I took them up on it this time and went over.
And I believe through John O'Keefe.
How well did you know them at that point?
Not very well.
If you could indicate sort of who's talking or who's saying it.
It says TF, hurting like this in 10 years. Haha. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who's saying that.
All right, we need to get to the text messages between him and Karen. And skipping up, fan. Hope someone's dusted that. There'll be all sorts of bacteria up there. Okay.
Defendant's state of mind as it might go to the going to hear or see is testimony about certain statements allegedly made by the defendant. You're to view those statements solely for the limited purpose of the defendant's state of mind as it might go to the nature of the relationship with John O'Keefe and potential motive. Okay. All right, Mr. Lally, go right ahead.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Now, in my opinion, this is a complete and utter waste of the court's time, basically. It's trivial, it's juvenile, it's like two high school students. They basically have allowed this to try and discredit Karen and her character, and it just makes them both look silly, really, but, it doesn't make her guilty. Yeah. We'll play it. We'll go through it because it'll be referenced throughout the trial. But
what those are?
Yes.
What do you recognize those to be?
Text messages
juvenile.
between the defendant and I.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth to move to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No, not as the next exhibit. We are going to mark that 104A.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes. 103A.
Come on, Auntie Bev.
John O'Keefe's texts were 103. So it's 104A. And jurors, you'll have both Exhibit 104 with you that was a little bit difficult to read. What we've taken all this time for as counsel was great to work out a form that is much clearer for you to be able to read, and that will be attached or right with Exhibit 104. Okay. Thank you.
Her shirt matches her drink bottle.
All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Lally.
Now, Mr. Higgins, first, Your Honor, may I request permission to publish the Bureau on screen?
Yes.
And yes, they do go through all 56 pages.
Now, Mr. Higgins, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 104A?
Yes.
Oh.
And as you just mentioned, these are text messages between yourself and Ms. Reed, is that correct?
Yes.
And on what dates did you first receive any communication.
Wednesday, January 12th.
January 12th, 2022.
8:27.
And prior to that, had you had her number, or did she have your number as far as you're aware?
No,
You had never communicated to her via cell phone or any other means prior to January 12th, 2022.
no, I had not.
So initially, you
So,
received
Brian,
a
is it a
text on
Brian
that date
thing?
from an unknown number? Is
That-
that correct?
Brian's a
Yes.
talented at butt dialing.
And
Thing is, it's Brian
in the
Albert
text before
or
you,
Brian Higgins.
and what's up on the screen as far as there are gray bubbles on
In
the left,
correlation
blue bubbles
to
on
the
right,
Brian.
which is you and which is Ms. Reed.
The blue bubbles would belong to myself.
So the other bubbles would be Ms. Reed, is that fair to say?
Yes,
And so that initial communication you received on January 12th, 2022, that's about 8:27 p.m., is that correct?
yes.
And what was
Oh,
the
look, now he's
content
going,
of
la,
this
la, la,
message?
la.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Hey, Brian, it's Weed Whacker.
And how did you respond to that?
Question mark.
And if it's helpful to you, sir, if you can't see the screen sort of from where you are, you can read along in the exhibit before you.
Okay.
Now, as far as
What,
that communication is concerned.
on that point, Brian, what confuses me is the medical examiner's report. He only had blunt force trauma to his head, at the back, both eyes. His brother Paul, when he saw him, said he looked like he'd gone through a few rounds with Muhammad Ali, basically. So, and then he had the lacerations to his right forearm and just above the elbow. There was no damage or injuries to his lower extremities. So someone did a reconstruction video of what position he would have had to have been in to have sustained those injuries by a car reversing into him, given that his height is 6'2", I think. So had she reversed into him, he would have possibly had some pelvis or abdominal injuries, so to speak, or even, his femur. But there was nothing there. And the lacerations to his arm aren't really consistent with like gravel rash, or what the prosecution is saying is that those marks were caused by Karen attacking him with the broken cocktail glass. Yet if you go on to Melanie Little's YouTube channel and have a look, she actually has a dog bite expert on her channel, and he goes through how they teach the dogs and train the dogs in the police force to attack, and and they showed the dummy arm that they use, that the dog attaches to, and apparently the way in which a dog bites, it doesn't actually just appear like a puncture wound, because there's two reasons. They're trained to bite and pull back, and also it's the person's natural instinct to pull away as well. So they, instead of just being a puncture wound, they become like a straight laceration. And depending on how deep each tooth goes into the flesh, it depends on how far apart those lacerations are. So he really explains it very well, and it's almost identical to the lacerations on John's arm. So, and plus, not only that, he was 12 feet off the side of the road into the lawn, not right beside the curb. He was 12 feet in the property boundary line of the Alberts. And to sustain, I can't even remember who did it. Might have been Turtle Boy. He actually did a reconstruction video of it. But I think she had to be doing 62 miles an hour in reverse to actually hit him and cause him to fly in the air 12 feet into the lawn, but then he would have hit the plow, which was parked directly, supposedly, behind her Lexus. So, yeah, it's very confusing. And yes, there is hundreds and millions and thousands of variables. The reconstruction, they said the only way that he could have attributed the trauma to his head was it be that he was leaning forward, almost like bent forward, touching his toes, but on a side angle as well, because there was one at the back and both eyes. So, yeah, and yeah, the fact that the dog was rehomed, the fact that the Alberts replaced the floor in their basement and sold the house, within the next couple of months. So I've seen countless dog bites. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. That's the point that the dog specialist was making. And yeah, Melanie Little has him on her channel, and the dummy arm it's identical. It's identical to the dog bark, the dog bite. But yeah, we haven't gotten to the medical examiner yet, have we? Like that. I don't. Does anyone know who is up next on the witness list for tomorrow? I'd be interested to find that out. I can't get on there at the moment. I've got too many tabs.
Concerns is the weed whacker. What, if any, meaning did that have to you? Or
So ultimately, it was based off a interaction with the defendant, kind of a nickname that she adopted.
Weed whacker.
And
sounds
how did
like
that nickname sort of come to be, or what, if anything, transpired between the two
Wolf
of you
Harris.
that led to that?
Wicka wacka, wicka
So
wacka.
I was leaving, I believe, my residence one day in Canton, traveling down Pleasant Street.
Someone from the
I saw the
River Trip.
defendant along the side of the house on the Pleasant Street side using a weed whacker. And I gave kind of a beep of the horn.
You have to explain that
and
one to me, Brian.
The defendant gave me the finger. So I realized that she clearly must not have recognized me possibly because of what I was driving. I was in my work vehicle. So I spun the vehicle around, and as I pulled up to roll down the window, she said something to the effect, "Get the fuck away from me. My husband's a Boston cop." And then I rolled down the window more, and she clearly recognized me, who I was in that vehicle.
And did that become sort of a recurring theme in subsequent conversations that you had with Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Now, sir, if I could direct your attention to page 6 within that exhibit before you.
Yeah, she's definitely had some.
They're not
Botox
numbered, right,
for
Mr.
lip
Lally?
flip up there for that duck.
I'm sorry?
They're
That
not
duck
numbered.
pout.
Your copy numbered?
No, Your Honor. Not that I can see.
Some Botox work done there, and
They're not. So
At
be
least
cognizant of
cheek
that when you
fillers.
ask questions.
You know, I believe they are. So that's why I hesitated.
in my opinion.
It's sort of in the middle of the page, facing sideways.
Oh, my apologies. I have it now. Very small.
So just on this page, directing your attention to the bottom,
Yes.
it sort of goes on to the next date of January 13th. Is that correct?
Yes.
They were on yesterday. The two sisters.
If I could direct your attention to page 7.
Is that who you're referring
those
to?
text messages. And Ms. Gilman, if I could have page
The
7 on the screen.
O'Sullivan sisters, because they were on yesterday.
And sir, if you could read from page 7, and if you could just indicate who's speaking and what is being said in this communication.
So again, I'm in the blue bubbles. Did you try those Smirnoff screwdrivers? I stopped at the Hilly for one last night. I said, haha, how did you get my digits? Defendant responded, the Melissa and Lito show. I said, haha, I thought you creeped John's phone. I said, haha, again. Defendant responded, no way. I was the last person in Greater Canton who didn't have your number. I think even Kerry has it. I responded, what, with a bunch of question marks? I said, I just don't give my personal number out to anyone. How would Kerry have my number with a bunch of question mark? And the defendant responded, Melissa had it.
As far as in those communications, the reference the defendant makes to
He was
the
making
video
a-
show, do you know what that means?
He
The
was
two
making-
individuals that I also know from the hillside.
having a jab, I think,
And,
basically
Terry
saying that everyone in town had his number. Yeah, no, the O'Sullivan sisters were on after Jen McCabe yesterday. There must be a witness list somewhere. Has to be.
Person that she refers to, do you know who that is?
I believe that's Kerry Curran, Chris Curran's wife.
Paragon of truth, yeah.
Now, if I could direct your attention to page
In
9.
what dimension?
And it's going to be page 9. And again, sir, if you could read from page 9 as far as that conversation goes, it just indicates whom is speaking at different points.
Okay, so the defendant said, I prefer a weed whacker. I responded, that's the thing about nicknames. Defendant said, we were tossing around the idea of a short vacay with the current show, wanted to see if you were game. I responded, you don't have a say. And I believe I was referring to nicknames. And I said, vacation where? Defendant responded, I know. They need to happen organically. I'm the queen of nicknames. Was just going to rent a beach house in, I believe it was supposed to say Fort Lauderdale. It's abbreviated. Something quick and easy. I said, Defendant responded, I'm the queen of vacays too. Always a good time. I responded, I'm going to Nashville next month, 19 to 21st, for a benefit. One of our guys got shot in the head. You guys should come.
Oh, it sounds like
As far as either one of those trips that you were discussing, do you recall any further discussion or any going on any of those trips?
Well, I mean, I definitely went to Nashville for that benefit for one of my coworkers. There may have been more conversation about the Florida trip, but I can't specifically recall it.
Now, sir, if I could direct your attention to page 16, Ms. Gilman, if I could have that. And this is on that same date of January 13th, is that correct?
I believe so. The date's not at the top here, but I believe it is.
And again, sir, if you could read from that page of communication as far as who was speaking and what was said.
So there's a photograph of somebody with a weed whacker. The defendant said, no, you're not a creep. I said, nope.
We call that a
She
witness
said,
over here.
you're kind of a loner, which I used to be. I responded, no, not really. I have a ton of buddies, but I only let a handful of friends in that I'm tight with. So you think you got me figured out? And then I typed circle of trust in quotes.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to the next page, number 17. Ms. Gilman, if I could have that. And again, sir, if you could read from page 17 as far as what is said and who is talking.
So the defendant said, yeah, I said loner, not loser. I assume you know a lot of people, PPL, people abbreviated. You never really can figure anyone out completely. Your dad died when you were young. And I responded, he died in March of 2020. I'm so not a loser. You won't figure me out. LOL. Defendant responded, no one is a loser. I just didn't mean loner to imply friendless. I'm sorry that's recent. It wasn't COVID, was it? I responded, cancer. Defendant responded, I know you date girls who don't lock the house behind them and you are private and observant. I'm sorry, what kind? I responded, lung, brain, kidney, and pelvis. How do you know all these things? LOL.
Don't lock the house behind them.
If I could turn your attention to the next page, 18.
Bizarre.
And again, sir, if you could read from that.
In the blue bubbles is me. I said, you're funny. Defendant responded, yikes. Wow, that's rough. Jesus, I'm sorry. We chat a lot at the hillside. I responded, don't be sorry. Life is hard sometimes. I always figure it out. Then I said, who chats? ? Defendant responded, life is hard, but losing people is the hardest. So I'm sorry. We chat. I responded, that's all you got? We chat? Sure, you're from Brockton. Spit it out. Defendant responded, you and I chatted about the girl who kept forgetting to lock the door. I said, oh, she has been out of play like for 3 months now. And then I believe it starts to say out of rotation, ?
And then, sir, if I could direct your attention to page 20. And again, sir, if you could read from that.
I'm in the blue bubbles again. I said, I just got a Saturday invite. The defendant said, did you say yes, question mark? I said, not yet, with a bunch of periods, but did respond. Defendant said, what did you say, Mr. Elusive? I responded, no, I just don't want to intrude on your couple's night. Ha ha, I'm shy.
Oh,
The defendant responded, we prefer to hang out with non-couples.
Whatever.
Bob Gallery is probably coming too, solo. We'll probably do cards or something at some point. I'm inviting you. And I said, ha ha.
Now, sir, is that the Saturday night that's being referenced there? Is that the same night that you had gone over to the home at some point for the Patriots game?
Yes.
And if I could direct your attention to the
Of course
next
you
page,
win.
page 21.
Yes.
And again, if you could read from that page.
The defendant said, John said Brian's being wishy-washy now, in quotes. I responded, haha, did you tell him you texted me? The defendant responded, no. And then I gave a thumbs up. Then I said, you cranky now, question mark. Defendant said, haha, no, just stop being so anti-couples. Most couples don't even like each other. I said, name a few. Defendant said, name a few? I don't know. All of them, question mark. They all want to hang out with single people. And then I said,
Thank you. Sir, if I could direct your attention to page 26. And sir, if I could ask you to read from that page.
in blue is going to be myself again. Foul ball. Defendant responded, you stink. I said, you suck and you're double trouble. Defendant responded, you're hot. I responded, are you serious or messing with me? Defendant responded, no, I'm serious. I responded, failing is mutual. Is that bad? How long have you thought that? Defendant responded, are you okay driving? You don't want to stay here. I responded back, I'm fine. I have an office at the PD. You didn't answer the question.
They must have been texting each other whilst he was at their place watching the Patriot games, because they're quoting the baseball, aren't they? And she's saying, why don't you stay here? So he must be there. So they're having this text off whilst he's at her house watching the game with John.
And then it starts to say, the defendant said, rather you stay here.
And is that, to your memory, when is that sex exchange taking place? In reference to the night that you went over to the Okies.
I believe it was that night.
Yeah.
Now,
See?
at
I should have been a
Mr.
detective.
O'Keefe's house on that particular evening, do you recall how you came into the house?
I believe it might have been the front door.
And if you know, about how long were you at Mr. O'Keefe's house that night?
I was probably one of the last people to leave, I think.
And what, if anything, happened as you were exiting from Mr. O'Keefe's house that night?
So as I was exiting the house, it was either through the breezeway or the garage. And as we were walking out, the defendant planted a kiss on me.
Now, before you went out that way,
Be so lucky.
Where was Mr. O'Keefe? Did you say goodbye to him or anything like that?
I think I said goodbye to him. He might have been in the bathroom. I'm not 100% positive where he was.
And when you went to leave, which exit from the house were you headed to initially?
Well, as I said, I don't remember exactly if it was the breezeway or the garage I was starting to walk through, but whichever way I started to exit, the defendant told me to go a different way.
And which way did the defendant tell you to go?
Well, her way. I honestly can't tell you which door that was. If it was either the breezeway or the garage.
And as you were going out, again, I'm sorry, what happened?
The defendant kissed me.
And how did she kiss you?
Not like a friend.
Lip to lip, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Like a romantic kiss?
That's the way I interpreted it.
And were you still inside the house at the time that this occurred, or were you outside the house if you know?
Not sure if we had just got to the outside or not. It might have. I'm not sure if it was close proximity to leaving.
And what was your reaction to that?
I was taken back.
Was that something that you were expecting?
No.
And about how long was it between when the defendant kissed you and when you left?
Oh, almost immediately.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention back to the exhibit before you on page number 27.
Yes.
Again, sir, if you could read from that page and who's speaking.
So I'm in the blue bubbles, and I said, I think you're messing with me. The defendant said, why do you think that? I responded, because this is so out of left field. Where did these feelings come from? Defendant responded, I just think you're like me. I said, meaning, question mark. Defendant said, do you have your own kids? I said, I have no kids. How am I like you? Question mark. Hello. And defendant responded, aren't we alike? I responded, I think so. So why did you get my number and reach out to me? And I think the defendant put a question mark on that bubble, I believe. Or I might have, I don't know.
Now, that conversation as far as you asking
Just have
her
like
about
two 12-year-olds.
why she reached out to you, how often was that question asked by you through the course of these text communications?
Well, the extent of the actual communication via text between the defendant and I was between January 12th and January 29th when John passed. On the 28th and 29th, the 28th, I sent the text, as we spoke about before, when we were at the waterfall.
See, my mum is Maltese, so there's hundreds of us. We breed like rabbits. So it actually takes you longer to say hello or goodbye to everybody than it does for you to attend any family functions, because you have to kiss everyone goodbye, not once, but twice. So to me, a kiss is a kiss. Like, yeah, he should be so lucky he got one on the lips, but yeah, he's just making a big deal out of sweet FA as far as I'm concerned.
That text didn't respond.
They both sound
There
like
was a
they're
text sent
very
by the defendant to me the next day.
insecure.
So in that time period between the 12th and the 29th, there was 9 days that the defendant and I exchanged text messages. With that being said, those text messages, I don't believe were every day, consecutive days. There was 9 days in between the 12th and the 29th.
And so as far as that questioning, as far as posing to her, why did she reach out to you? Was that something that you asked once or more than once?
Yeah, I asked it more than once, and during the pendency of this communication, I was basically trying to suss out what the intentions were of the defendant. Was the defendant interested in me? Was she at the end of her relationship with John? Was she trying to weaponize me against John and put me in the middle? There was numerous things that were going on, and that's what I was trying to vet out or suss out, or whatever you want to call it. But I was having a hard time accepting what was happening.
So
Yeah,
if I could
'cause
direct
you're
you to
above
the
your
next
average.
page 28. And again, sir, if you could read from that page.
So I'm in the blue bubbles. Shoot straight with me. Defendant responded, I told you, I just think we're alike, right? Couple question marks. I responded, yes, agree. Now what? Defendant responded, I don't know. I said, shouldn't you know? Defendant responded, do you like me? I said, yes, from jump. Defendant said, when was jump? I said, first time I saw you. Defendant responded, when was that? I said, Hillside for your shore.
If I could direct your attention to the next page, 29. If I could ask you to read from that, sir.
So again, I'm in the blue bubbles. Hillside for sure. When were you interested? Defendant responded, I don't know, you're just my type. I responded, you think you can handle me? I thought you were happy, question mark. Defendant responded, how do you know if I'm happy? I said, I just assumed. Defendant responded, are you hard to handle? I may have put a question mark. Then I said, what do you like about me? Defendant responded, I just feel like you're from my neighborhood. I said, yes, yeah, ditto. Defendant responded, and I think you're hot.
And if I could direct your attention to the next page, page 30. If I could ask you to read from that, sir.
I'm in the blue bubbles again. You really think that? I have always thought that about you. Defendant responded, what? I responded that you're hot, smart, witty, but I didn't think you were interested. Defendant responded, witty? I responded, yeah, meaning quick with a response. Tell me why you got my number and reached out to me. Defendant responded, just thought we were the same / from the same neighborhood. I responded, are you afraid to say what's on your mind? What's in your mind? And then I said, on. Defendant responded, No, didn't I? No, didn't I? Question mark.
And sir, if I could turn your attention, to the next page, 31, and ask you to read from that.
I'm glad I'm in the blue bubble again. I'm glad I stopped by. I should have come earlier. Do you really live in Mansfield? Defendant responded, yeah. I was basically begging you. I responded, you don't have to beg me. I meant to say beg. Defendant responded, huh? I said, I will give you what you want. How are you texting right now? Then I said, leaving me hanging. Defendant responded, no. I typed kids and then kinda. Defendant responded, how am I texting? And I began to say, is everyone asleep?
As far as the communication from the defendant indicating, yeah, I was basically begging you, what did you take that to mean?
That she wanted me to come over?
And if I could turn your attention to the next page, 32. If I could ask you to read from that page as well.
So it starts off with the defendant saying, I just wide awake on my phone. Yes, they are. I said, I should have stayed, LOL. So now what? Question mark. Defendant said, yes, you should have. I responded, that would have been distracting. So now what? So no, what? And then I said, now. Defendant said, now what? Question mark. I responded, balls in your court. Defendant said, what do you want? I responded, loaded question. What do you want? Question mark. Defendant responded, I asked you, exclamation point. I in turn said, nope, you initiated this.
If I could turn your attention to the next page, 33. If I could ask you to read from that, sir.
I said, spit it out. I'm in the blue bubbles. Defendant said, hey, we're single and we don't have kids. We can do whatever we want. I responded, don't you have a boyfriend? Question mark. Defendant responded, where are you? Question mark. I said, Canton. Defendant said, where? Question mark. I responded, my office is at the PD. Why? Are you going to Mansfield? Question mark. Defendant responded, where is that? I said, Canton PD. Defendant said, I have a house there from before I reconnected W. John. I responded, oh, I feel like you're not really saying what's on your mind.
If I could turn your attention to the next page, 34, and ask you to read from that, sir.
Defendant starts off and says, do you like me? Question mark. I responded, yes, clearly. Defendant said, come over my house. I responded, when? Question mark. Defendant said, when works for you? I said, whoever, and then whenever. When works for you? Question mark. The defendant said, I asked you first. I responded, I think you're messing with me. Defendant said, I'm glad you came over tonight, with some type of face. I responded, me too, balls in your court. What do you want, Karen? You look great tonight.
If I could direct your attention to the next page, 35, and the last, or second to last blue bubble down the bottom, starting with, are you glad? Do you see that?
Page 35?
Yes.
And where is it again?
Second to last blue bubble, starting with, are you glad?
Yes. I said, I'm in the blue bubble. I said, are you glad you walked me out? Question mark.
And what did she respond?
Defendant said, yes, with like semicolon, some type of a mark there. Are you? Question mark. And I said, DEF for definitely.
And if I could direct your attention to the next page, 36. And if you could, please read from that.
So at the top, I'm in the blue bubbles. It says yes. And then I said, are you going home tonight or tomorrow AM? Defendant texted, we kissed, comma, right? Question mark. So then I put a question mark on her question and said, is this a trick question? Defendant said, I don't know when I'm going home. I'm selling my house, with what I think is a smiley face. What a trick question, and a couple of question marks. I responded, are you moving to Canton? I'm following your lead with this. Defendant responded, I live here, but I have property in Mfield. I'm guessing it's Medfield. Defendant said, why my lead? I don't want any responsibility. I responded, you started this, right? Question mark. Why did you get my number? And it says each out to me. It meant to say reach out to me. I then said, still have not told me.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to the next page, 37, and ask you to read from that.
Defendant said, sorry, should I not have? I responded, I'm fine with it. Just don't know why you can't answer. Defendant said, you're mad at me? I said, OMG, no, not at all. You're being silly. Defendant said, I told you, exclamation point. I just think you're like me and I'm attracted to you. And then she said, a lot. I responded, feeling is mutual. I just never saw this coming. Defendant said, why? Question mark. I responded, because I just assumed you were happy with your situation. Defendant responded, I was, but things have deteriorated.
And if I could direct your attention to the next page 38 and ask you to read from that, sir.
I said, why? Question mark. How so? Question mark. What did Melissa say when you asked for my number? Question mark. Defendant responded, it is very, very complicated. He and I dated when we were kids, and then his sister died and everything got fucked up. I responded, he seems very into you. Defendant responded, I just told Melissa that I had your number but lost it. I said, that's cute. She wasn't suspicious? Question mark. Defendant responded, no, she's great. I responded, does she know you like me? Question mark. Defendant responded, she's a sweetie. We just agreed. You are great. With another smiley type face.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to page 40 and ask you to read from that.
Defendant said, yeah, but where is that? I have had all my shit here for a couple years and my house has been vacant, but I'd like to get closer to the water. I responded, are you breaking up or staying together? Defendant responded, I don't know. He hooked up with another girl on vacation. I'm very close to his niece. It is a very fucked up situation. I responded, when was that and how did you find out he hooked up? Question mark. I don't want to complicate your situation. Defendant responded, we went away for New Year's, the four of us. I put the kids to bed and found him in the lobby of our hotel all over one of our friends. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I responded, it does matter.
Now, as far as that indication that she made to you, either through text communications or in person, did she indicate at any point in time where that occurred?
So there was an occasion that the defendant stopped at my house. And again, the conversation that took place at my house was in relation to, again, sussing out and trying to figure out if this was everything that I stated before. Like, was this legitimate? Was she seriously interested in me? Was she at the end of her relationship with John? And during that, there was touch on that topic, and I became to realize, it was my understanding at that point that this incident took place in Aruba on New Year's Eve, based off the text messages and the conversation at my residence.
This was something that she brought up, not only in the text communications with you, but in person in communication with you as well.
Yes, I mean, outside of being over there for the game, there was only one time that the defendant and I ever interacted on a one-on-one basis.
If I could direct your attention to the next page 41 and ask you to read from that.
So I'm in the blue bubbles and I said, did they bang? Question mark. The defendant responded, does that matter? Question mark. I said, sorry, I was just asking. I was just trying to figure shit out. Defendant responded, it doesn't really matter. I said, okay, I won't ask again. Defendant said, I don't care, with a smiley face. It doesn't matter. I responded back, okay, hear you loud and clear, Karen. Defendant responded, okay. I responded, why are you getting your thing all twisted up over simple questions? And then I typed on. Defendant responded, I'm not. I am, question mark. I responded, you're kind of getting defensive. Defendant responded, not at all, with an exclamation point.
Thank you, sir. If I could direct your attention to page 46. Ask you to read from that.
Defendant is in gray. She said, we did kiss earlier, comma, no, with an exclamation point. I responded in blue bubble, I think you initiated that, no, question mark. Defendant said, yep. Do I owe you an apology? Question mark. I said, OMG, no. Why are you being sensitive? Defendant responded, I'm not. I responded, kinda. There's a P and a FFT, never, responded by the defendant. What do you want from me? Question mark. I responded, what's on the table? Question mark. Defendant said, what do you want ideally? Question mark. I responded, the real deal. Defendant responded, it doesn't exist.
Thank you, sir.
That's John O'Keefe's brother.
Direct your attention to page 57, sir. And ask you to read from that.
It starts off in blue. I said, I can go to any base, but usually Hanscom and Bedford are down to the Cape. Defendant responded, which base down the Cape? Which branch? I said, Army's Army. Defendant said, I'm not abnormally sensitive. I responded, Joint Base Cape Cod. I won't be so hard on you. Defendant responded, OMG, you're not. You called me trouble. That makes me sound bad. I responded, I was just playing with you. Defendant responded, you weren't, but that's okay. I responded, stop being sensitive, please. Defendant responded, I'm not.
Now, sir, in reference, in that page of text communications, you made reference to a base down the Cape, is that right?
Yes.
And where is that in relation to where you live in Barstow?
It just sounds like
So I can utilize one of the gates to get onto the base. I can get fuel.
Two insecure people needing constant reinforcement with low self-esteem.
I can shop. I then can hit the Bourne Bridge, and I would use that as a cut through at the time when I was splitting my time between two different properties.
Is there also like a duty-free shop there?
There is. Kids present constant issues. I responded, I think he believes he is doing the right thing. Defendant responded, well, of course he is, but his heart isn't in it. It's only because he was very, very close to his sister. I responded back, I know how you feel, kinda. I was married, and when I met her, she had a 2.5-year-old. I went from being single to being a dad. It's hard. Then I said, I'm divorced since 2017 and have no kids.
If I could ask you to turn to the next page, 62, and ask you to read from that, sir.
Oh, 3 to go.
I said, I'm divorced since 2017 and I have no kids. Defendant responded, I try very hard, but they are very spoiled and they're not my family. My parents keep telling me I'd feel differently if they were mine or my own sisters. Then I told you he got drunk and sloppy on NYE while we were away, and that has really affected me. I responded, what did he exactly do? Question mark. Defendant responded, I never got married, and now somehow I'm arguing someone about raising kids with an emoji. I responded, why don't you tell me? Question mark. Defendant responded, he was a puddle all day and then disappeared. Then I found him all over our friend's sister in the lobby of our hotel, and she's gross, which I think may actually be worse. Not sure. I responded, oh God, did they bang?
And ask you to turn to the next page, sir, page 63, if you could read from that.
I think that's
I'm in the
all she
blue.
was
I
after,
said, did they bang? Question mark. Defendant said, so I was the kids celebrating New Year's, I think it's without him, which shouldn't be my role. No, I doubt it. He was a mess. I said, was it the first time with her, or do you think there were others? Defendant responded, I don't really think there were others. I'm with him all the time. He never seems to want to go anywhere, without me. But honestly, the issues with the kids bother me more than him actually cheating. They are constant, and it feels like a lose-lose. I responded, You clearly have a lot of feelings swirling inside you. Defendant responded, yeah, it's very complicated. Sorry for the rant. I responded, or began to respond, you can vent, babe.
Oh, cringe. You can vent, babe.
The next page, 64, ask you to read from that, sir.
Defendant said, basically, I just feel like I spread myself too thin, and sometimes it's thankless. I responded, Defendant responded, you probably felt that way too. I responded, I did at times. It was 1, not 2, thankfully. Defendant responded, want to grab a drink? Question mark. I responded, if you gave me some notice, I could have. Defendant responded, you in capital letters said you were adaptable. I responded, I am, but I have my work truck with me and not my personal. Do you get angry when you don't get your way? Defendant responded, that sounds like an excuse. I rarely get my way.
Now, as far as her invitation, is that something that occurred on one time or more than one time?
I believe it was more than one time.
And at any point in time, other than the two you've already recounted, as far as going over to Mr. Oakes' house for the football game or the defendant stopping by your apartment in West Roxbury, were there any other occasions you went out over the defendant's house or out with the defendant by yourself?
No, never.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to page 74. Ask you to read from that.
Defendant said, are you single? Question mark. I responded, yes. Defendant said, I don't think it's out of left field. Wasn't I already begging you to come over last Saturday? Question mark, question mark. I responded, you getting my number from Melissa and reaching out to me? Question mark. Defendant said, and on vacay and probably a few other occasions. I responded, you didn't it should say you didn't really beg. Defendant said, I asked at least twice. How do people usually reach out to each other? Question mark, question mark. I responded, why would I have thought you had any interest in me? Question mark. Usually do it when they do live with, do it when they do live with someone. And then I said, do not do it. Defendant responded, maybe, maybe not.
Thank you, sir. If I could direct you to page 77.
Oh, somebody make it end.
And ask you to read from that.
How
sir.
much more is there? Surely no.
I said, I could go on, but I've been a lot in my life. I have a little bit of cop DM mindset, and then said, been through.
Yeah. Blah, blah.
Defendant said, I'm assuming point is that there's a difference between being married to someone and dating them, and we have no intention of ever getting married. The point of dating is not to get tied down. If you're not confident, you should be, in my mind anyway. The first two, but
Yeah. Blah, blah.
like I said, it was this type of like, what is this all about? And then she left.
Saturday, the 29th at 11:54 a.m. Is that
All right,
correct?
this is the last one.
Yes,
And who is speaking in that communication and what is said?
that is the defendant, and the defendant said John died.
And did you respond to that at all?
No,
And did you have any other communication with Ms. Reed following receiving that text message on January 29th?
no, I have not.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take it.
So what did that achieve?
If I could, a couple more questions for you, taking you back on the early morning of January 29th, when you had come from Waterfall to Fairview and then you were leaving from Fairview, if I could turn that sort of portion into your mind. When you're pulling away from the residence, the period of time that you were talking about as far as the plow being down and scraping a little bit on the ground, can you recall that?
I do.
About how much distance are we talking about with respect to that?
Distance less than a foot, I would say. I mean, it's real quick. I heard it.
And then as far as when you familiar with an area in the front of Mr. Albert's property at 34 Fairview, where there is a flagpole and fire hydrant?
I do know where that is. Yes.
And as you drove by the house that evening, where were you in relation to that part of the yard?
When I drove away,
Yes.
well, I might have been I was in the street. I pulled away, so that area would be on my passenger side.
And so more what I'm asking, sir, is as you pulled away, did you pull away alongside the curb? Did you pull to the middle of the street? Or where did you direct the vehicle to go as you were pulling away?
Like any other time, I pulled away from the curb, and that's kind of it's a one-lane street, so to speak, and nobody was coming towards me, so just pulled out into the street, drove away.
Oh, okay. Here's Mr. Jackson.
Where's your attorney?
I don't know. He might be in the courthouse.
Is he in the building?
I don't know where he physically is.
Now, Brian Higgins has turned up to court with his attorney, so he has legal counsel with him. Why would one need that? I wonder. We're about to find out.
I traveled to the courthouse with
Who did you meet here?
an attorney, my attorney.
Is there a reason that you felt compelled to bring an attorney with you for your testimony as a witness in a homicide investigation?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Trial, I should say.
Sustained.
You brought your attorney with you who's sitting right behind you, correct?
That is not my attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were his attorney. My mistake. Where's your attorney?
I don't know. He might be in the courthouse.
Is he in the building?
I don't know where he physically is right now.
Okay. Without telling me anything that you said to your attorney, did you meet with him this morning before your testimony?
Yes.
Did you meet with him during the break? Again, don't tell me what you talked about, but did you meet with him during the break when we took a break a few minutes ago?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And obviously the subject matter, again, without telling me any communication, the subject matter was your testimony here today, correct?
No.
How many conversations have you had with Mr. Lally about your testimony or your proposed testimony in anticipation of you testifying today?
One.
When was that?
That was on Monday.
How long was that conversation?
I would say under an hour and a half.
In person or over the phone?
In person.
Where was that conversation?
That was at the DA's office.
Who else was there?
My attorney, victim witness advocate, I believe her name is Kristen Collins, ADA McLaughlin, ADA Lally, and Lieutenant Brian Tully from the Mass State Police.
Anybody taking notes?
I did not. I don't know if anybody was taking notes.
Well, you were sitting there watching.
Alan
it was recording.
Jackson's
Did you take notes?
chomping at the bit.
Not that I saw, no.
You had an hour and a half long conversation with the prosecution team and a police officer witness, and you're telling me that you did not see anybody taking a single note down. Is that right?
That's correct. I did hand something to Lieutenant Tully, but he didn't take any notes in reference to what I handed him.
What'd you hand him?
I handed him a piece of mail that I got at my residence.
Anything having to do with this case?
Oh, I believe so.
Was that turned over to Mr. Lally?
No, I turned it over to state police.
You want to maybe approach for a second?
Yes.
And skipping sidebar.
Other than that piece of mail that you handed to Lieutenant Tully, was there any other exchange of documents or anything like that? Were you shown anything in anticipation of your testimony?
The only thing I can be recalled showing was a photograph of the exterior of 34 Fairfield Road in Canton.
What about the text messages that you just went over extensively? Were you shown those?
I was shown a pile of papers, and I was advised that those text messages were going to be, they were put into another format, so they were easier to read.
And these are the screenshots that you just described on the exhibit.
Well, as I said, he showed me the stack, said they were the text messages. They were in a different format, but I'm assuming that's what they were.
What was your assignment with the ATF back in 2022?
I was assigned to the Bridgewater Field Office, but I was full-time with the United States Marshal Service doing fugitive apprehension.
And where were you physically officing out of?
Well, I continue to maintain the office at Canton PD.
Okay, but to be clear, you were a federal officer, not a Canton police officer on some sort of a task force with Canton PD, correct?
No, I was not on a task force with Canton PD.
But you did have an office at Canton PD based on a personal relationship that you had with the chief, correct? He gave you this office as a courtesy. Is that right?
So if I can explain.
Yes or no? Was it provided as a courtesy?
Well, working partnership, I would say.
And you've been asked that specific question in a prior hearing, correct?
Yes.
In June of 2023, right?
Yes.
And you explained, look, it was a personal relationship that I had with Chief Berkowitz.
I did.
It was born out of
Tragedy.
a family tragedy that he was aware of.
Horrible tragedy, yes.
And based on that personal friendship and that personal relationship, he offered you the convenience of officing out of Canton PD.
I would say that's a good summary.
And in addition to just having an office there, you also had a key card access, correct?
I did, to get in and out.
What was the name that you used? You said it was a proxy card?
I think it's called, I think in the IT world, it's probably called a proxy card. That's what I know it to be.
So you had both a physical office and full access to Canton PD, all based on the friendship and relationship and convenience. The friendship and relationship you had with Chief Berkowitz and the convenience that he wanted to give you for having that office there, correct?
No, I wouldn't say full access. I had access to certain areas within the department.
Well, you certainly had access to and from your office.
Yes.
You had ingress and egress to the Canton Police Department.
Yes.
You could go in and out of the Sally Port.
I could.
You could go upstairs to Chief Berkowitz's office.
Yes.
You could go downstairs to the dispatch area, which is on the first floor, correct?
Yes.
And then you could go out to the Sally Port, into the Sally Port, across that garage, those two bay doors at your leisure.
Well, that would exclude the evidence room, the arms room, and places like that. I didn't have access to those places.
Right. But the places that I just mentioned, you did have access to.
Yes, absolutely.
You'd had that office for what? Back in January of 2022, probably had that office for more than 3 years?
I would estimate probably sometime around 2018.
2018. Okay,
Yeah.
not 18 years. 2018.
No, 2018. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My apologies.
So, maybe close to 4 years.
Yes.
Okay. I want to turn your attention, Mr. Higgins, to January 28, January 29, 2022. By the way, I should ask another foundational question. Are you currently still at ATF?
Am I employed by ATF?
Correct.
Yes, I am. A special agent. Yes.
And what is your current billet or your assignment?
Objection.
Is that something you're free to discuss?
I'm assigned to division operations at this time.
Okay, what does that mean? You're taken out of the field?
Was I taken out of the field? Yes.
Are you no longer in the field?
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike.
Sustained. Let's move on.
Why were you taken out of the field?
Your Honor. I want to turn your attention now to January 28, 29 of 2022. You recall those dates?
I do.
You've been living with those dates for the last couple of years.
Like a nightmare.
John O'Keefe's body was found outside your friend Brian Albert's house on the morning of January 29th, 2022, correct?
Yes.
You've previously testified that on January 28th, you had gone to New York for this memorial service, correct?
Funeral service, yes.
The funeral service, not the memorial. You separate the two.
So, well, the wake would be the night before funeral. I call them the services. It wasn't a memorial. Memorial to me would be more of like an annual thing. This was the services.
Understood.
Just want to be clear.
So you went with Brian Albert, Kevin Albert, and Eddie Hernandez. Is that right?
I traveled down there myself, but I I met up with them.
to go to the services.
Yes.
Is it fair to say that you and Brian Albert and Kevin Albert sort of run in the same social and professional circles?
I mean, without speaking for anybody else, I think we know a lot of the same people.
Go to some of the same holiday parties, for instance.
Yes.
Go to some of the same events, whether they're law enforcement events or otherwise.
Retirement parties, yes, things like that.
Might meet up at a bar and have a social drink together.
Yes.
Might share a meal together, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree that you particularly are pretty well connected to the Canton law enforcement community.
Could you qualify that, explain that?
You know quite a few cops, right?
Well, it's a small department, so I do know everybody in the building in some capacity.
Okay, so my question is, you know quite a few cops in Canton.
I do.
You're pretty good friends with, matter of fact, maybe best friends with the chief of police, former chief of police, Kenny Berkowitz, correct?
Yes.
You know Brian Albert, he's a Boston police officer.
Yes.
You know his brother and work with his brother at Canton PD, correct?
Yes.
So it's fair to say, back to my original question, you're relatively well connected in the law enforcement community, the fabric of that community in Canton. Is that right?
Well, I think that comes with working with people, yes.
Is that yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. As a matter of fact, you've even given a personal toast at one of these events, these retirement events, et cetera, correct?
Chief Berkowitz, yes.
And during the course of that toast, you even said, if you want to hide a body, Kenny Berkowitz is your man, correct?
Objection.
Did you say that?
I don't recall that.
You don't remember telling that joke in front of a room full of folks?
I don't.
If you want to hide a body, Kenny Berkowitz is your man?
I don't.
You will agree that some of your closest friends are some of the more powerful people in Canton in terms of politics and law enforcement, right?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
At that same retirement dinner, there were members of the DA's office there, correct?
Yes.
As a matter of fact, the DA, Michael Morrissey, was there.
I believe he was at one point.
All right. And that was the same event that you gave either a keynote speech or some sort of a speech for Chief Berkowitz's retirement. Is that right?
Yes.
How long
Have
have
you
known
seen
Brian
this
Albert
testimony, Brian?
specifically?
I think I had some interaction with him when I was on the Cambridge Fire Department in my capacity in fire investigations. And then I would say pretty much through my entire career at ATF, you know, I came into contact with Brian.
Give me a number of years.
Well, I've been with ATF now for 15 years. I've probably known him at least that whole time.
You'd say that you have both a social and professional.
You know what's
working
coming then.
relationship with him.
I would say, yes, he's a friend.
Frequently drink together,
We have drank together. I wouldn't say frequently, but yes, we've drank together.
break bread together, have meals together.
Absolutely.
Just you wait, Brian Higgins. Just you wait.
We had lunch.
As a matter of fact, you were asked at a prior hearing
Hello.
whether or not
Hello,
you could put a
welcome.
number on the number of times that you've
Thank you for
had
joining
drinks
us.
with Brian Albert. You said somewhere around 50 or something like that.
Sweden.
Or under, actually, you said
Yay.
under 50.
Under 50, I think I might have said 30.
Welcome from
And
Melbourne,
that was in 2
Australia.
years, correct?
Yes.
So not under 50 in the entirety of your relationship, a 15-year relationship with Brian Albert,
What
literally in the
suburb are
prior
you
2
in
years when you
again,
gave
Brian?
your testimony in June of 2023. In those 2 years, met up with him and had drinks under 50 times.
Was that a question?
Yes,
Could you rephrase it?
sure. Is it true that you testified, answer, quote, I mean, in 2 years, I mean, maybe under 50, end quote. That was your testimony to how often you socialized with Brian Albert, correct?
So we socialized more when I started working with his unit.
Okay, so my question is, well,
I don't know the exact number, but yes, we socialized. Absolutely.
that's all I was getting at.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, there's no secrets here, right? He's my friend.
Mr. Higgins,
I've
Let me ask
seen
a question.
her
I
and
get it.
That's
listened to
fine.
her on
Um,
RA streams a lot.
you also know Brian
Lo-
Albert well enough
lovely
to
to have
know
you.
what his relationship
Thank
with,
you
for
for
instance,
joining
the other guy that you traveled back from New York with, Eddie Hernandez.
I do know Eddie Hernandez. I actually know Eddie the longest out of everybody.
So you knew Eddie, or Officer Hernandez.
Objection,
before
Your
you
Honor.
ever
Ask the question.
You knew Officer Hernandez before you ever knew Brian Albert.
Yes.
You knew him before.
What's RA streaming today, seeing as the Karen Reid trial is not on today? It's Memorial Day, isn't it, over there? The weather looks lovely. It's bloody freezing over here. That's a technical term that we use here in Australia. Actually, it's not, touch wood, it's not that cold yet, but it's getting there.
Before you even knew Kevin Albert.
Yes.
And you're aware that there was a physical altercation
Objection,
between
Your
Brian
Honor.
Albert and Eddie Hernandez that you're aware of, correct?
The objection sustained.
Are you aware that
I
Brian
agree.
Albert had gotten into a fist fight with Eddie Hernandez?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were you at a Christmas party when that happened?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to that form. You can be specific.
Have you ever?
The position that he needed to be in to sustain those injuries to his head and forearm at the speed that she would have had to have been traveling without making contact with the supposed plow behind her. Impossible.
Ever been an event with Brian Albert
Okay.
and Eddie Hernandez and seen them fight?
Objection.
Should have
Christmas
sent some stream over.
5 years or so before 2022.
Okay, the objection sustained.
You do know that Brian Albert has a reputation for being a fighter.
Objection.
Sustained.
You were asked in
If
a
you go
formal
on to-
interview.
Turtle Boy has a video clip of Brian Albert when he was younger in the boxing ring. And he has, you know, how Colin Albert testified that he had never had a fight with anyone apart from his brothers. Turtle Boy put out an offer and said, all right, I'll give the first person who can give me a video on Colin Albert in a fight $100. And he got 2 videos straight off the cuff of Colin Albert in a fist fight.
Do you recall? I want to make sure I'm clear about some of your prior statements. You had a formal interview with some folks prior to your testimony at a prior proceeding. Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I'm tracking.
Okay. At the formal interview, which is what I'm going to call that.
Okay.
The formal
Yes, there
interview, you
are.
were asked about Brian Albert and his reputation. Were you not? Yes or no?
Yes.
You indicated in that formal interview that even Chief Berkowitz was
Objection.
quote, a little afraid of Brian Albert.
All right, so that is the objection sustained. That's stricken. I'll see you at sidebar.
There was a stream I did, I think a couple of days ago. Was it maybe it was last Thursday night. Perhaps, I can't remember now, but I actually did a screen share with some of Turtle Boy's one of his streams, and he actually has autopsy photos of John O'Keefe, of John's face and the back of his head and his arm as well. So I don't know if you saw the article, which was later confirmed by a police source. John was about to. Oh, really? Wow. Ooh, the plot thickens. So, what kind of drugs, dare I ask? And we were having a chat last night online, Angela. Apparently, when John died, his mother and him hadn't spoken for some time because they had been fighting for custody over his sister's children, apparently. So, yeah, it was terribly sad. It was Gabby that said that, I think, wasn't it, Bri? Yeah, I'd love to see that article. It's in the Boston Times or something. Oops, script one. Okay, I wonder if Turtle Boy knows anything about it. He might. He knows everything else. On Twitter or X. Okay. I don't use Twitter. I should. I don't know how to use it very well. I'm not that IT savvy, unfortunately.
May I inquire?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. You're
I can
also
work YouTube, though.
relatively close friends. In addition to being close friends with Brian Albert, you're also relatively close friends with his brother, Kevin, correct?
I am.
Kevin Albert is a detective with the Canton Police Department. Is that right?
Yes.
And you've worked in the same physical office with him for a number of years.
Down here now.
Physical building.
Physical building, that's a better way to put it.
It's different.
Is that right?
Jackson's
Yes.
getting
And
a bit
it's fair to say that
excited.
you've consulted with Kevin Albert on certain
knows
of
what's
his
coming.
cases professionally. Is that right?
I've assisted.
And you've also socialized with him, shared drinks with him,
Yes,
gone out
I
to
have.
bars with him. Is that right?
Yes, I have.
It's fair to say that you know the Albert family relatively well?
I would say that I know Brian and Kevin the best.
On January 28th, you drove your Jeep Wrangler to the Hillside Bar to meet up with Brian Albert for drinks, correct?
I did.
You said you drank 3 to 4 whiskey sodas at the Hillside. Is that right?
It'd be Jameson and ginger, not whiskey soda.
My mistake.
My daughter's name is Jamison. Well, they call it Jameson, but yes, she's not a whiskey, but she is definitely called Jamison.
Jameson and ginger. Jameson is a
Unrelated
Irish
whiskey.
whiskey.
It is.
And
No.
ginger is ginger ale.
Yes.
No,
Okay. What was Brian
not
Albert
from
drinking?
Jabba.
If I was to guess, a beer.
I don't want you to guess. Do you know what he was drinking?
No, I don't.
He was drinking.
He was
something?
drinking something.
Okay, alcohol.
Oh,
Yes.
You two were probably going round for round. In other words,
Was it in a
finish a drink,
glass?
get another round for the two of you. Finish it, get another round.
I don't think we. No, I wouldn't say we were going round for round.
So he was nursing one beer while you had 4 Jamesons?
Well, it would have taken. Say that again.
He was nursing one beer while you had 4 Jamesons? When you sat there?
No, he was probably. Maybe he had more beers than I had Jamesons. Is more what I would say.
Okay, so maybe he had 5 or 6 beers while you had 4 Jamesons.
I'm not going to put a number on it because I don't know.
But it was more.
More than what?
More than you.
Maybe. He wasn't there that long.
Well, it doesn't take that long to drink a beer, does it? I mean, if you're sort of thirsty and in a hurry.
Is that a question?
Everything I say up here is a question.
Okay.
No, me.
Well, all right. So
Well, that wasn't. So
Bev has to say thank you.
Yes, Mr. Higgins, that was a question.
All right, let me put a question mark at the end of that.
okay.
Your memory that Brian Albert had more drinks than you did when you had those 3 to 4 Jameson and gingers.
To be honest with you, I wasn't keeping track.
He left Hillside and you stayed, correct?
For a short time, yes.
You later changed your mind and ultimately decided to go to the waterfall. You finished whatever you're eating or drinking and decided to go over to the waterfall, right?
Many time.
Yes, because I'm always saying I'm going to show up and then I kind of do the Irish exit. So I decided it was a long day. It was an emotional day. And I decided to join them.
Did you drive your vehicle over there
Yes, I did.
after having as many as 4 whiskeys?
Yes.
Brian Albert, did he drive himself?
Well, I didn't see him. I dropped him off in Boston PVD district down there in Charlestown. And I'm assuming he drove back towards that way to meet me.
He wasn't with anybody else.
Not that I know of.
So he was drinking at the Hillside Bar and then got in his car and drove over to the waterfall as well.
I didn't see him drive over, but I assume that's what he did. Yes.
You went to John O'Keefe's house. I'm going to shift gears for a second. You went to John O'Keefe's house at some point to watch the Patriots game on January 16th, right?
Yes.
That was the time when you indicated that when you...
Angela, do you know who's next on the witness list for tomorrow by any chance?
You left, Karen gave you a kiss goodbye, correct?
Yes.
It's safe to say that that was not some hot, passionate, long kiss. But you think it was more than just a
No
friendly
tongues?
kiss, correct?
I wouldn't describe it as a peck. I describe it as more than friends. It was a kiss.
Well, you did describe it as a peck, didn't you?
When?
When you texted Karen Reed and she said it was just a peck, and then you texted back, I agree.
Figure of
That's
speech.
true. That's true. Yes. Yes. They left us on a cliffhanger, didn't they?
Figure of speech.
After that incident, it's safe to say, we've just gone through a number of them, you exchanged flirtatious texts with Miss Reed. Is that right?
Is the incident you're referring to when she kissed me?
No, I'm saying after that. After that incident, yes, after the Patriots game.
Okay. Yep.
Put it down
you
as staff a
exchanged
minute.
flirtatious texts
We did.
with Miss Reed.
I did.
And that was over the course of
Consumable?
a couple of weeks, but just 9 days. Is that right?
So it was between the January 12th and I would say before the 28th, because the 28th, she didn't respond. And the 29th, she sent that last text that John died.
Well,
Those weren't,
You've looked at the text, right?
I have.
You just looked at the last couple of texts.
I did.
The last text that she sent of any substance was January 23rd, right? Almost a
Well,
week-
I think the text,
almost a
I think the
week-
text on the 29th, John died, there's substance there.
Okay, I'm not suggesting, I'm talking about after you said, well,
Yeah.
28th, right? The text of substance between the two of you, talking between the two of you, not the John died text. That substance ended on the 23rd, didn't it?
You have to
I'd
watch
have to have the
CLR Bruce Rivers. He is hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. Criminal lawyer reacts is what CLR stands for. Bruce Rivers. Very funny. Very, very funny man.
text in front of me to agree with you.
I think they should name him. AJ.
I think it's right here, Mr. Jackson, right in front of
Jay?
the exhibit's right there.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
Is that an inside joke, Bri? We don't have bears over here. We have kangaroos and koalas. I suppose that's a bear. Yes, we're all looking forward to
Thank you.
Proctor. Absolutely. Oh, Alan Jackson. Sorry. It's late, all right?
Are you directing me to the 23rd?
I'm directing you to the last page. Just look at that, everything
Definitely.
on it, and tell me if that refreshes your
Can't wait
recollection.
for
This is
Proctor.
the last substantive text about you and Karen before your well.
Yes, it'd be the 23rd at 9:40.
Okay? So it was 9 days.
I like both of them. I like Eddie
texting
as well.
Between the two of you, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And aside from the kiss goodbye, you two never had any sort of physical contact with one another.
Do you mean intimate? When you say physical?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
I'm not talking about shaking her hand, Mr. Higgins.
Yes, he said.
Well, I want to answer your question truthfully.
I would like you to too. You didn't have any physical intimate contact with Ms. Reed,
Certainly
right?
no
No, I did
sex.
not.
There was
No,
no other
it's good.
hugs or kisses or certainly no sex.
No.
Oh, he says it. Good on you,
Um,
Jacko.
And when she said, I'm glad you came over tonight in one of those texts that you just read a few minutes ago, she was referring to the Patriots game with John there and a big crowd there, correct?
Yes.
Over the course of that week or so, Ms. Reed did explain her feelings about her relationship with Mr. O'Keefe, correct? In text messages.
During the pendency of our communication, she did express, yes.
And she indicated that there's a difference between being married to someone and dating someone, et cetera. We saw those texts. Is that right?
Yes.
She also indicated that in terms of the situation in Aruba, she was upset by that, but it's not that big a deal. Correct?
It was clear to me she was upset.
And she said, I don't care
Sounded
too
like
much
two
about
12-year-olds.
that. Right?
Well, at least that's what she
Remember?
said in text, yes.
You're a
That's what I'm
12-year-old.
asking you. Is that what she said in text, Mr. Higgins? It's not a trick question.
That's what she said in text.
Right. She said something along the lines of, I'm just trying to be realistic. There's cracks in the relationship. It's far from perfect. Is that right?
I think that's something she texted.
All right. And you'll agree that during the course of these texts, you were constantly asking for clarity and explanation from her. Were you not?
During our communication, I did ask for clarity.
Many times. You
Yes.
saw it, correct?
Yes.
And she pretty much wouldn't answer you, correct?
She was non-committal, I would say.
Which is why you were saying,
But then why would he cop it? He would just deny it, wouldn't he? What's the point of him bringing all those up?
saying in your texts, why won't you answer the question? And she would parry and not answer that one either, correct?
Well, I didn't want to be stuck in the middle of anything.
That's not my question. I'm asking you whether or not she would answer your question about
He didn't want to be
clarity
stuck in the
specifically.
middle of it.
She
Said, I don't feel comfortable chatting to you like this, especially given that you're the girlfriend of a mate of mine. So I'd appreciate it if you stopped. Just saying. Instead of continuing for 9 days.
avoided questions about text.
And that was frustrating because you
know.
were very interested in her romantically at that point, correct?
I was attracted to her. I don't know that I would say very interested in her.
You texted things like, why did you
You
get my
wanted
number
to
and
bang
reach out?
her.
That's a quote from the text.
Come
you just read,
on.
correct?
I did ask that, yes.
You said, now what? Is that right?
Just
Yes.
own it.
You texted, so now what, correct?
Yes.
You texted,
Now what?
I would hang out, meaning with you,
Yes.
correct? You were showing interest in her.
Yes.
You were showing romantic interest in her.
I wouldn't say it was romantic. I was trying to vet it out.
Well, you weren't seeing if she wanted to go see a ball game with you as a buddy, right?
Not really, no.
No, you were showing romantic interest in her.
He kissed her and not the other
I
way
was
around.
trying to vet out was her interest in me legitimate. It was very normal for me to have that question in my mind when
Yeah,
I
'cause you
didn't
were
initiate
above
this, she
average.
did. And I think it was a fair question just to try to find out.
You were showing romantic interest in Karen.
You
Reed.
wanted to bang her.
I was interested, but I don't think I was at the romantic phase.
Okay.
Oh.
When I say romantic, well, what do you mean by romantic? What's the romantic phase?
Sending somebody flowers?
Dating?
Well, there's a difference between dating and hanging out. I mean,
Well,
it's kind of hard to date somebody when you have a boyfriend.
Mr. Higgins, well, not if
Yeah,
both people are dating other
exactly.
people, right? Happens all the time, doesn't it?
Well, I think I asked that question
You
too.
wanted a
Right.
quick
That's not my
confidence
question.
boost.
My question is, you seem to have a problem admitting that you had a romantic interest in my client. Is there a reason for that?
I was attracted to her.
Right. Physically attracted,
I thought she was an attractive woman.
romantically attracted.
I'm not going to go there.
I'm
No,
staying
I don't
real
agree with
clear
that.
Of course, you're not going to go there because that would put you in a very awkward position, wouldn't it, sir?
Objection.
Not at all.
So the objection sustained is to the form. You can ask it differently, and that answer will be
Sexually-
stricken now.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. May I?
Yes.
You were sexually attracted to her.
I was physically attracted to her, yes.
Okay? Sexually attracted to her was my question.
Well, I think in the text I said you're hot.
Okay. So my question again, Mr. Higgins, you seem to not want to answer my question. My question is, were you or were you not sexually attracted to my client?
Did you or did you not?
Yes.
Yeah, tell
Okay.
me.
You were saying things like, what do you want from me? And I want the real deal. Those are your words, correct?
Yes.
And the real deal with you would be to date her, to get involved with her romantically, correct?
No.
The real deal was what? What did you mean by I want the real deal?
Like a relationship.
What kind of relationship? A buddy-buddy relationship? You just want
And
to go like,
scissors to cut the SIM card.
The same thing everybody wants, a real relationship.
like a romantic relationship, Mr. Higgins?
It's possible.
Right.
I'm that
And
friend.
she was answering with things like, when you said, now what? She answered, I don't know, correct?
Yes, she did.
When you asked, so now what? She answered, I'm sorry, when you said, so now what? She answered, now what? Correct?
Who said what?
Well, I don't have it in front of me,
Who's
so
on first?
I can't agree with you.
What's
If
on
you-
second?
I'd like to see what you're referring to.
Well, you just read it about 10 minutes ago. Would you quarrel if
I know, but you're giving me portions of it.
you were given portions of it by Mr. Lally as well?
Yeah.
Right? Did you
Yeah, I
text
liked
something
it
like,
first.
now what? And she
I-
responded something like, now what?
I think on one occasion she did, yes.
Okay. And you remember you just read a text where she texted, I'm sorry, you texted, what do you want from me? And her
We're nearly
responsive
there.
text was, I don't know. Correct?
I think that was one of the texts.
Again, with this theme of her being non-committal, one way or the other. Is that right?
Well, that's not how I would interpret it as a theme, no.
Well, didn't you just say she was non-committal? That was your word, not mine.
I did, but as I told you, it's been a process of trying to suss it out and see what this was all about.
Right. So when you were sussing it out and determining whether or not you were going to
She wanted to
advance
bang.
this romantic interest, she was sort of non-committal, wasn't she?
Well, not one person advances it. I think that's a joint thing.
When you texted,
Yep.
you want the real deal, she responded, it doesn't exist, didn't she?
She did, yes.
And she never once in any of those texts expressed anger or hatred toward John.
What do you think he was doing that entire day of the 29th when he spent that day at the police department? Do you think he was actually getting information and feeding it to Brian Albert from the sergeant, Berkowitz? Berkowitz? Do you think he was playing the middleman? Do you think he was trying to get as much information as he could for Brian? Do you think he was there? I think, this is my opinion, that Karen and John turned up to 34 Fairview. John wanted to go in. Karen decided that for whatever reason she didn't want to. So they may have had an argument or whatever, and he's gotten out of the car. And I believe he did go inside. And I think something was said, or whether it was Brian Higgins or Brian Albert or Colin Albert, someone said something. A fist fight ensued. He topples down the stairs, and they all go, "Oh fuck, what do we do now?" And but the dog, yeah, I reckon the dog, because the fight broke out, the dog has gone into, protect the owner mode, and yeah, they've basically put him out on the lawn, put the phone under him, and gone from there. But so what was that? Hang on, where are we? Yes, they're very talented in Canton. They must have thumbs on their butts or something, because they can butt dial. I should try to see what's going on. Yes, you could be our man on the ground. Yeah, take some photos of the house, and because they sold that, they got rid of the dog. They sold that. They replaced the basement floor as well. Who's BAC? Was that Higgins? Or was that John? Oh, no, it must be Higgins, because he was drinking whiskey, yeah? Yeah, it's 0.08, the legal limit. Is that right? Heard you never wanted to go to Fairview. That was the plan. Let's just drop John off and... Yeah. Yes. Yes. I agree. So Higgins did... so he wasn't smashed. He must have a good tolerance for whiskey.
No, not at all.
But in fact, she indicated more of
I'd
frustration
be off
with
my face with those.
immediate family. Kids, she didn't want to have kids.
In its totality, I would say yes.
She's cracked the shits with him because she has to go home and babysit whilst John goes in. And I wonder if someone in the house, whether Brian was telling the other Brian, he'd been texting Karen, and John overheard it and started arcing up maybe, and then Colin stepped in. Because the dog would be there protecting one of its owners to attack, surely. That would be the main reason. That's going to keep me up tonight.
And then on January 23rd, as you just saw, she just
What
stopped
time is it over
communicating
there?
with you altogether, correct?
Because it's 11
Until the
o'clock
29th,
at night.
Do you know what the term ghosted means?
I think I have a general idea, yes.
Yeah.
She ghosted you, didn't she?
I wouldn't agree with that.
Sure, it's happened to you before, Brian.
That was frustrating to you, that she just stopped communicating, wasn't it?
No, not at all.
You had been moving through this mindset of exploring a romantic interest with a beautiful woman, thought was interested in you.
Yeah.
That was done.
She dropped you like a hot
No.
cake.
So what communication did you have with her after January 23rd?
Well, she texted me on January 29th.
You keep saying that, but you know what I'm getting to. January 29th was her informing you that a tragedy had occurred.
Oh.
John had died.
Geez, you
right?
got up
I'm not
early,
talking
Brian.
about that, Mr. Higgins, so I don't want to keep playing games.
Did you wet the bed?
All right, so that's what we talked about. No more of
Sorry, Your
that.
Honor. After the
Oh,
23rd,
mommy's too
or up
tall.
to the 23rd, she had been texting back and forth with you pretty regularly. You just saw it, correct?
Oh, did
She also sent me a text with arrows saying the phone works both ways.
And as of the 23rd,
You know, we
she
were
stopped.
trying to find out last night where they are, where the children are, and who's looking after them, and what's going on with them now, because I don't know. Yeah, I haven't heard what their status is.
The texts were sporadic over those 9 days. I don't know if they would have stopped or they would have kept going.
Well, they didn't keep going,
Maybe
did
they
they?
went. John,
Well, John
Mum.
passed away.
You know they didn't keep going because from the 23rd onto the 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, all the way to the 29th, she never texted you, right?
I believe so.
She didn't respond to any of your texts, correct?
Well, she didn't respond to the text on the 28th Friday.
All right, why don't we take our lunch and recess, folks? What I'm going to ask the jury to do is, can we do a 45-minute lunch instead of an hour's lunch today?
What?
And also, you don't have to answer me now, but maybe we'll go to 4:30 rather than 4 o'clock. if that
Oh,
works for you.
was that
If it
only half
doesn't
of the
work
day?
for any
Oops.
one of you, let the court officer know.
Jury is leaving your notebooks on your
Right.
computer. All right, call me, jury.
Okay. Well, let's have a look at my timeline again then, shall we? So we'll go back to the start. So after that testimony, so in Sweden it's 3 p.m. All right. Well, it's 10:59 p.m. on the dot right here, right now. And I'm tipping 8:59 a.m. where Bry is. Yeah. It's maths. It's too late at night for me to do maths. Right. So, I still haven't got my head around how Ryan, Nagel, Ricky, and Heather never saw Brian Higgins' Jeep at all when they saw Karen's car. So, so Jen and Matt McCabe leave 34 Fairview at 1:47. So everything happens between the 12:15 and the 12:50 mark. And there is a heap of deleted stuff that Jen McCabe calls John's phone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times between 5 a.m. and 5:52 a.m. that morning, but deletes all of those phone calls. Along with, she deleted the 911 call and the 2 calls to Nicole, and the call that she tried to contact Brian as well. But then what got me was that at 6:35 a.m. she calls Matt. And they have a 19-second conversation on the phone. That too was deleted. Now, she hadn't rung Matt. So she's been out with Karen since, 5 a.m. just about, 4:53, searching for John with Kerry. Not one phone call in her phone records between then and 6:35 was made to Matt to let him know what was going on. But at 6:35, she has a 19-second phone call and she explains everything that's gone on in those 2.5 hours in 19 seconds. Really? 19 seconds. Just doesn't make sense. You have a theory about... Do tell. Okay. They never saw his body because he was in... Yes. Yes, I agree. I believe that somehow he's toppled down the stairs to the basement, and then they dumped him on the lawn. Yep. But yeah, that 19 seconds. Don't tell me that you can explain everything that's gone on and what happened to John in 19 seconds. She was just touching base. That's all. They dumped his body after 3 a.m. because, no snowplow drivers. Yeah. But then Kerry Roberts said that, I suppose between 3 and 6 when he was found, she said there was, 3 inches of snow covering him. So 3 hours out in the snow. Yeah. Well, it was dumped before the snow started falling heavily because it was grassy under him and his phone was there as well. And the snow plows are lit up like Christmas as well. And don't tell me, listening to that 911 call, that the Alberts heard nothing. You know, and he was a detective, a police detective. So they didn't, all the dash cam and body cam footage, I didn't hear any sirens, but there were definitely lights. There was at least 2 fire engines, an EMS, and 5 squad cars with lights, and Karen screaming hysterically, and no one in that house heard anything and came out. No one. Someone explained that the body heat... Okay, yeah, but it couldn't have been... It wouldn't have... an inch of snow, it wouldn't have melted that much. And found the body on sister's front lawn area to bang on the... Yeah, yes. That's what I was saying, They opted for the baby blankets that were in the back of Kerry's car, but not one person went inside to get proper blankets or towels or something. She knew her sister had all that stuff in there. The 2 phone calls were apparently answered by Nicole. Like, one was 8 seconds and one was 9 seconds, I think. But they both deny that they were answered. And then she tried Brian and he didn't answer. Milton, yeah, I got you. And don't forget that, he's not... Once he's deceased, there's the body heat, the body temperature decreases fairly rapidly. So it's not going to continue to melt the snow. So I don't know. It's just all... It's really, really sad and really unnecessary and just tragic, really. Tragic all round. I don't believe she did it. I don't believe she's guilty of... Especially not with any intent anyway. But I couldn't honestly say I knew who did do it. And I suppose we'll never know unless the FBI does another document dump. What do we have? We had police chasing my neighbourhood a few months ago. Who lived there, had shelter. Yeah, glued to the window. Should have got the scanner out. And they're telling me they didn't even bother. Yeah, absolutely. Especially a police detective, as if he's not going to look. Those lights would have been lighting up his bedroom. Yeah, I call bullshit. But anywho, that's just me. So, interesting. You can download it. It's an app. It's an app on your phone or on your PC. It's called Descanify, and it's an international scanning. And you just basically put in the local area that you want to look for. Of course. Aren't they always? There's always one. All right. Well, perhaps we should wrap this up, seeing as it's been 2.5 hours. It's time for my Jimmy Jams and bedtime. I'll get my Milo. Snuggled up in a warm bed and watch some YouTube. Oh, dear. All right. Well, did you like my song? Anyone like my song? I actually have saved it as an MP3 now, but I haven't had a chance to download it. Oh, have I? Let me see. Oops. Well, wrong one. Crap. I'm glad you didn't see what I just did to my computer. Let me see. Oh, I'll play. Did you hear my Tyro? Oh, no, I won't. I won't make you sit through both of them. Where's my song? Come on. Is that it? Just once. I wrote this. How good's that? I wrote it. Okay, you can stop now. Thank you. Where did the media player go? Yes, Descanify, I think it's called. But yeah, if you put that Descanify in, it will come up. It sounds something like that. But yes. All right. Nighty night all. Enjoy. Thank you for joining me yet again. It's been lovely speaking to you all and chitty chatting. Oh no. Yeah, see, that's the issue I had with the case I wanted to follow in Kentucky. I can't get on there. It keeps saying not valid in this country or region or whatever. So I couldn't access the Zoom or the Zoom link to actually stream it. So spewing. Anyway, all right. With that, I'll take that off there. I shall say nighty night, and I shall bid you adieu. Until next time, bye.